What's up everyone, it's Deemer Class and hope you're off to a great start this fall ball. Today, we're gonna be going over our post-practice shooting workout and thinking about coaching tips and self-corrections. This is gonna be great for any of you coaches out there who use some of these drills with your players and you're thinking about what kind of tips you can give and pointers you can give. This is also going to be especially great for all you players out there who have been using our post-practice shooting routine over the past year. And the goal with this is to give you a lot of the self-corrections and self-adjustments that we believe you need to make as a player. And I think at some point, you're going to take more ownership of your game and think about what can you do differently, what are you feeling, and really self-assess, and then learn how to make some of those main points. The last piece with this is that there can be so many different things you focus on when it comes to shooting, and I want to make sure that you're keeping it to a couple simple core points so that you can feel that in your game and you're not overly analyzing yourself, and you're also not under analyzing and not giving yourself any feedback when you're out shooting on your own. So we're going to go through that same workout. If you haven't already, check out the link in the bio and this link up here for the post-practice shooting routine so that you can make sure that you dive in. And if you've already been in it, let's make sure we dig in here and we go through each of the 5 drills that we talked about in that video. So the first one we're going to talk about is our spin and fire drill. So if you can remember, our spin and fire drill is a simple one. It's back to the cage, it's stick out and extended, and from either side you can open and rotate and step to your target. Now, there's a couple things I want you to think about and really try to look to self-adjust, and what I see players doing wrong is, number one, when we're extending, you don't have to be fully extended with your arms really uncomfortable. I think there's a myth of overextension when it comes to shooting. I think you need to be comfortable, and when you turn and rotate, your bottom hand should be just about even, right, with your shoulder and your back leg. So make sure that you're not overly extending to where it's uncomfortable, but also make sure that you're not having your hands out in front. The second thing I oftentimes see with players is that when they start and spin and fire and they turn and rotate, they start to turn their stick. And we're going to get into that when we also talk about step-up shooting, but make sure you're trying to keep that stick rather straightened out so that when you rotate, you're rotating around the stick. The stick shouldn't have to move that much when you turn and then you fire. The next thing that I want you to really take away from this spin and fire drill is how you're opening up and where you're stepping. All right, this is all about stepping to the target and make sure that you don't open up too much. A lot of times I'll see players, if they're shooting to the far pipe, they'll open up too much to the right, and that pulls that ball in that direction or causes your hands to push and compensate. Or they'll open up and they won't rotate enough and they're keeping their hips closed off to the cage. So just make sure that second big piece to spin and fire, that you're opening up to that right perfect balance to where you're stepping directly to the net and to the spot that you're trying to shoot. We'll take 1 or 2 more here just so that you can again see a quick visual. So we talked about in the workout getting 5 to 7 reps when you do that drill. 5 to 7, 5 to 8 each hand. Still a great amount for our post-practice routine. Next, we're going to come over here to our step-up shooting drill. And again, we'll kind of touch on a couple of the main corrections and self-adjustments that we're looking for. So again, the purpose of our step-up shooting drill, knowing that you're never going to be in this position in the game, the purpose is really working on your back leg weight transfer, your stick path, and then just, again, dialing in your simple mechanics. So the biggest thing we see a lot of times when especially younger players step up, they don't always get what I call over their back foot. They'll shoot and they'll still have that back foot in the ground, or even you can see some of their weight is still shifted back or to the back of their body. We want to make sure that when we step up, the big point is transferring all your weight over top of that front leg so that when you step up and fire, everything is right over top and you're almost catching yourself and gathering yourself after you drive. That's the biggest thing that I want all you players when you do step up shooting to feel. The only other piece to consider and build off of that is making sure that you're staying balanced side to side. So again, as you step up and you drive, you're not falling out to the left. You're not falling out to the right. You're getting everything to your target, driving over, and then you're gathering yourself, and you should be nice and composed. We want to do this, again, 5-6 yards away. We want to be really aggressive with these steps so that you can really lock out and drive, but then still be gathered. And that's why, again, as you get older, you'll support that with training and weight room, getting your legs stronger, getting your core stronger. The second thing that I see a lot, and this kind of gets re-emphasized again in the spin and fire drill, but it's how kids wrap around their stick around their body. And so you can see a common setup a lot of times when I'm getting set up and step into the goal, my butt end will be pointed out perpendicular to the cage. So here it's pointed out to the sideline. And then when I step up, I'm trying to come around and fire. I want you to do your best to, again, naturally straighten out that butt end so it's pointed more to the goal, more towards the target. It doesn't have to be perfect, even if it's more, you're dropping a little bit. This is gonna give us a better result and an easier time of coming directly over the top, as opposed to it pointed out this way, and now that stick coming through and rotating around. And you'll see a lot of players, that ball will actually spray high and wide, especially with their offhand when they're not pointed. So again, straighten it out, point it more towards the target. It should be over top or behind that shoulder, that back leg, so that when we step up and drive through, we transfer the weight and we get balance to the net. So our next one that we visited in the post-practice routine is our over the cone. And our over the cone drill we can do from the high wings, we can do from the wings, and everything is about sweeping and getting over the top. But it really comes back to, again, what we're trying to focus on when it comes to our on the run shooting. And so, our over the cone and the way that we teach on the run shooting is turning the corner and getting to the target. And this, I think, one, comes down to what you actually believe in when it comes to on the run shooting. I think we can all say a lot of the same things, but what coaches are willing to actually, say, hey, this is how you do it, this is our way of doing it, and having players buy into it, I think is really important. And so when we do on the run shooting, again, running over the cone is not a hard drill to set up, but it's what you teach, it's what you reinforce, and as a player, it's what you buy into. And so the biggest thing that we see and emphasize when it comes to our on the run over the cone shooting is, are you fading or are you turning the corner and getting to the net? And so again, like we talk about in that post-practice routine, we want to plant with that outside foot, and we really want to send our bodies and path down to the goal. What you'll see a lot of, and what you should feel a lot of as a player sometimes, is if you're not running to the goal, you're fading out to the corners, and you're taking more of a rounded approach, and you're trying to shoot maybe at the cone, and then you're fading out, and you're backpedaling away. This is something that when we do this drill, I want you to feel like you're really running directly at the goal, and you're even overemphasizing that at times, making sure that you're really turning the corner. The next piece that I think, again, allows us to get into this is that you'll see players start to take off on their sprint in shooting position. This just leaves us vulnerable to a trail check. So you'll see a lot of players running here, and then they'll turn the corner or they'll get downhill. We want to make sure that we're running with that good two-handed cradle. So making sure you're in that cradle, you're pumping that top hand, and then when you go to plant and turn the corner, on that plant step, that's when we start to slide down our second step, and then our third step we're coming through as we drive to the net. And so again, like, you could set this drill up in a lot of ways, but I think it's all about the adjustments that you're making. I think it's about the adjustments that you're teaching your players and what are you holding them to. It's going to take some players longer than others to get this down and get comfortable. Some players will just choose to never buy in, and that's understandable too. Everyone's got their different ways of doing things. But when you're trying to work on our post-practice shooting routine and work on turning that corner, those are the two things that we really want to emphasize and think about. The last thing, and I know I don't have my women's stick, but for our women's players, I see this more and more, is when we turn the corner, I'll see a lot of players, they'll plant and they'll start to open up their chest to the middle, and they'll start running downhill to the cage with their chest open. We want to make sure for all players, when we plant and we let our hands come back, we're keeping our shoulder turned so that when we're ready to shoot, we can drive that back shoulder and rotate. So staying closed when you turn the corner and plant downhill, that's the last big piece to make sure that you're putting all the pieces together with our over the cone. So we've talked about in our workouts different rep counts. I think this is a great time to, again, I believe that in that video we talked about anywhere from 5 to 8 reps per hand per drill, which might put us at around 50 to 60 shots when it comes to these 5 post-practice drills. I think it's really important, and we don't have a perfect pitch count or shot count when it comes to the sport of lacrosse, but I think it's really important to manage the reps that you're taking. If you go out and you take 200 balls 5-6 days a week as a young player, it's going to add up, and chances are, I bet most of you are not doing the proper prehab and warm up and recovery that's needed, and it's going to result in a lot of injuries on your back and your core and your hips. So let's make sure that you can be smart about how many times you're getting out. You're balancing out the things that you're doing. If you give a good 3 to 4 times a week, a good 30 to 45 minutes, I guarantee that you're going to still be in a really good spot when it comes to your training. So our fourth one that we just want to, again, build off of the over the cone and talk about when it comes to our post-practice routine is our layup drill. All right, and again, there's a couple key things to make sure that we're focusing on when it comes to this and making sure that we're self-correcting. Number one, let's make sure that we've got one hand extended and we're starting here. We're not starting in tight, we're not starting with our stick back. The whole point is to start out and extended. Number two, big aggressive first step with the outside foot. So if I'm shooting lefty, I'm starting with that left foot. If I'm shooting righty, I'm starting with that right foot and I'm really exploding. All right, and then the key, again, you could do the layup drill again in so many ways. The key for us is running back to our target, making sure that on that first, second, and third, we're finishing through, driving our back shoulder to the net, and we're almost making a semicircle or a small C in getting back to our target. So just making sure we take those 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, and we're driving through to the pipe. If you ever build on this with our split and load drill, a lot of the same mechanics apply. But what I'll see a lot in terms of, again, what you can be looking for the other way, I'll see a lot of 1, 2, 3, and fading out. This is not it. It's not what we're looking for when it comes to our layup drill. The last piece is we want to make sure that we're aggressive and running to the net. This is not that natural starting from a standstill. And so I would just say that really try to be explosive. And then after that first step, get that body turned so you can run to the net with that upper body closed. Take a couple more here just so you can see. The last thing I want you to notice is when we do this well, we shouldn't feel the need to backpedal. When we run to the cage well, we shouldn't feel the need to turn our hips and flip around into a backpedal. We can just get running to our target. All right, so the last thing we'll finish out in terms of our post-practice shooting routine is we'll just take a few time and rooms. And again, from here, we're just gonna emphasize again some ideas, some things to be thinking about. So when we talk about, again, taking our last couple of balls with our time and room, number one, we're stepping to our target. envision a straight line from where you're standing directly to that spot on the net that you're trying to shoot. That's gonna help us really make sure that we're staying on a good line. And so I'm taking my crow hop, 1, 2, 3, and I'm stepping to my target. If I'm going to the near pipe, again, I can still step to the far and send my hands near, or I can still choose to step subtly more open and step to that near side. So number 1, staying with the step. Number 2, I think it's really important when you're thinking about self-adjusting to make sure that when you're not hitting your shots, you're trying to make those adjustments. So meaning, if I'm going underhand and I'm missing, don't just go to sidearm, don't just go to overhand. Try to work through some of those misses and figure out, hey, when am I snapping, right? Or when am I getting my hands through, or where am I releasing from? And is that getting me the results that I want? And if not, what am I gonna do to fix that? How am I gonna snap earlier or later to bring that ball higher or lower? Am I stepping to my target? These are some of the things that we need to think through. And I think a lot of times I'll see a player miss a shot and then they'll just move on to the next one. And they'll just change the release point. And now they've got a lot of different release points with a lot of different results. And they don't have the ability to always think about, hey, what's causing one or the other, and think through that. And I think that as a shooter, we want to develop that feel by spending time mindfully and intentionally thinking about those options. I think kind of building off of that, when it comes to the stick path, spending the time overhand to the different spots, spending the time as you develop underhand to the different spots. I really recommend trying to stay a little more out of the sidearm range, unless you got different situations where you're shooting around defenders. But that's how I'm trying to think about the time and room. We talked about it in one of the earlier drills and adjustments, but just making sure that when you're stepping, you're staying balanced, you're not falling out to the left or to the right. And then lastly, making sure that you're transferring all your weight over top of your front foot. So we'll just take a few to finish. And again, if we miss, we'll take that same shot again just to try to make that adjustment. So here I'm pulling it high a few times. Now I'm gonna snap my hands later. Then I might take one low to low. Then I'll just finish off with an over the top. Left that one high, so now I'll snap it earlier to bring that ball down. So I hope you enjoyed this. This is a different style of content for us, but wanted to make sure coaches and players out there using our post-practice routine, check that routine out. Let us know if there's any feedback, but I hope you use these critiques, adjustments, and coaching points to make sure that you're dialing it in and making sure you're getting the most out of your time on the field. Make sure you keep following along on Instagram, our YouTube. We're putting out a lot of great content and film study. Thanks so much for your support, and best of luck as fall ball really kicks up.